Hi everyone, welcome back. So for this video, we're gonna look at our third market structure, which is oligopoly markets, and include prisoner's dilemma for game theory. So let's start with the characteristics of an oligopoly. In terms of number of sellers on an oligopoly, a market would have few sellers. So if there are only two, we call that a duopoly. But it can be 3, 4, even 15, but not a few hundred. Meaning, the number is small enough for them to be able to analyze each other's behavior and sometimes to collude. In terms of product description or the kind of product sold under oligopoly, the product can be homogeneous or highly differentiated. This is the reason why advertising plays a huge role under oligopolistic markets. Next, the oligopolist is a price maker. It can dictate the price, but its action or its pricing behavior is mutually interdependent, meaning it is affected by group behavior. In oligopoly, there can be 2 firms, as I've said, or 3 or 5, but whatever the number, it is quite small so that each firm knows that its actions will have some effect on other firms in the group. In contrast, for example, under perfect competition, there are a large number of firms which is impossible for them to collude or even to analyze each other's behavior. Therefore, their main goal was to maximize profit. In terms of barriers to entry and exit, some say that there's no barrier, some say there's middle barrier, some say that there's very high barriers. But for our purposes, oligopoly, we can say that it's got relatively high barriers to entry and exit. Okay, so sometimes you can see descriptions saying that the firms are only large firms. No, in oligopoly, the firms can be large and the firms can be small. So therefore, as long as any entrant to the oligopolistic market can compete with economies of scale, then it can be penetrated. Okay. In terms of pricing again, price rigidity appears in a monopolistic market because of several behavior can be expected from consumers as well as from suppliers when they peg the price. For example, we will look at this price rigidity when we look at the Kinked Demand curve under oligopoly. If a firm tries to increase its price, most often than not, the competing groups will not follow suit. And if it lowers its price, okay, a firm lowers its price, other firms might follow. So in order for the firm to maintain its position in the market and maintain its market share, sometimes the price is stabilized at a certain point wherein to avoid losing profit, it would be beneficial for the firm to maintain a particular level of pricing and not increase or decrease as they see fit. Okay, there are 2 graphs that are very important under an oligopolistic market, and we will discuss them one by one. This one is when a firm under oligopolistic market, okay, behaves in collusion with other markets under the oligopoly. Okay, meaning it can be a large firm, it can be a small firm, there can be like 10 or 15 firms, but if they collude or they form a cartel, okay, then they would act like a monopoly. They become one big firm trying to peg a price and maximize profit. Therefore, the graph for colluding oligopolists looks like a monopolistic graph because they function like a monopoly. Okay, so looking at this is the same graph as the monopoly graph. Please refer to that video. But here you can clearly see that because the oligopolists, okay, now a monopolist because they have combined their powers, kumbaga, do not peg the price at the socially optimal point. Okay, they would peg the price where the marginal cost meets the marginal revenue curve going up to the demand curve, just like a monopoly. So they would price their good or their service at price PM. Okay? Again, the socially optimal price or the competitive price is where our marginal cost curve meets the demand curve and the average cost curve. Okay? So at that point, that is you can see the price PC. That is not the pricing of the oligopolist, which is now acting as a monopoly, but price PM. The peach shaded part, okay, is now the oligopolist / monopolist profit. Now, the difference between monopoly and oligopoly, in monopoly, since there's just one seller, then all that profit goes to the seller, goes to the monopolist. But for oligopoly, that area is now distributed to the different groups that has colluded. So if there are only two groups, they can split it halfway or however their agreement was. So if there are many groups under the oligopoly, then that oligopolistic profit will now be divided among the different players. Okay? So same thing, same decision rule. All right? You can have your average cost curve on top of your demand curve, meaning it's accruing a loss. And if it's low like this, lower than the demand curve, then you are gaining profit. If average variable cost is on top of the demand curve with the average total cost curve or AC, then decision rule is to close down. But if the average variable cost is lower than the demand curve, even if ATC is above the demand curve, you can still produce. Okay? Sometimes oligopolists can do a pricing strategy wherein they try to lower the price so that the average cost curve and the average variable cost curve and average variable cost now becomes higher than the demand curve. That can be called as our predatory pricing. They can do that so that they eliminate some players in the market. Again, the oligopolist can lower the price, okay, which would make the average cost curve go above the demand curve and the average total cost curve go above the demand curve so that some players from the oligopolistic market are eliminated. Okay? The second graph, the second graph is what we call the kinked demand curve. Okay? So the kinked demand curve looks like this. And the explanation for this graph is that sometimes if one of the players in the oligopolistic market, let's say you have three players. Let's say Toyota, Nissan, and Mitsubishi. If Toyota increase its price, okay, you will be in the upper curve where the arrow is. If you increase the price, the other players in the market, Toyota and Mitsubishi and Nissan, will not follow because they know that they will lose consumers. So if one player increases its price, the others does not follow suit, then that particular area where the arrow is on top is what we call the elastic area, okay? Where demand is elastic. Okay, remember, kapag ang mga consumers ay elastic, they are very responsive to price changes. And a higher price mean that there'll be a decrease in demand. So, the other players know about this. So, even if one player wanted to get a higher profit by pegging it at a higher price, mawawala naman siya ng buyers. So, yung iba, they will just maintain the price. Okay? Next, if Toyota naman wants to lower its price so that it can capture more quantity or more market share, if Toyota can lower, then Nissan would say, why would we let you lower? We can also lower our price. And therefore, if one company lowers its price, the others will also follow suit. And that will be this downward sloping part of the curve. Okay? Where you can see that demand is inelastic. Why? Because most of the consumers will not change their consumption level anymore since all of the players in the market has relatively the same price. Lahat sila nagbaba, so therefore, there would be no major changes in quantity demanded. Okay? And since na-explain na natin why the marginal revenue curve is underneath the demand curve, you can see that it also follows the curve of this non-colluding oligopoly market. So ito yung non-colluding dahil hindi sila nag-uusap-usap kung paano at saan nila ilalagay ang price. So at the elastic curve, you can see that the marginal revenue curve is also below that curve or below the demand curve because the more units you sell, you have to lower your price. Okay? And bigla siyang nagiging straight line na ganyan kasi dahil nawawalan na kayo ng additional na profit because you keep lowering the prices, and the more you lower the price, the lesser the marginal revenue you get from selling another unit. Okay? So the kink comes from that. Upper part is the elastic curve wherein if one player increases its price, the rest will not follow. And if one firm lowers its price, the rest of the other players follow. Price rigidity appears here as well. Okay? So, kaya hindi masyadong malaki ang mga transition ng prices going up or going down kasi malaki ang magsasuffer from the profit of the seller. So, they would rather maintain it at a stable price P1, for example, so that hindi mauubos ang kanilang marginal revenue. Okay? Kung saan pinakamataas nila pwedeng makuha ang kanilang profit, doon nila siya ipipeg. Okay, so for game theory, I will create another video. Please watch that video as well. That is still covered for our covered under oligopoly. Thank you.